Episode 3. The Secrets of the Cave. Thomas and Emma moved cautiously towards the faint light, their hearts pounding in their chests. The cave walls were damp and cold, and the air grew thicker with every step. The light led them deeper into the mountain, revealing an ancient passageway lined with eerie carvings. The figures depicted on the walls seemed to move in the flickering glow of their torches, telling a story of a great and terrible darkness. "These carvings," Emma whispered, tracing the lines with her fingertips. "They're warning us." They pressed on, the light growing brighter until they emerged into a vast underground chamber. The ceiling was lost in shadows, and the walls were lined with torches that lit up the room in an unnatural flickering light. In the center of the chamber stood a massive stone altar, covered in strange symbols that seemed to pulse with a dark energy. As they approached the altar, they noticed a series of ancient texts and artifacts scattered around it. Emma picked up a worn journal, its pages brittle with age. "It's written in an old dialect," she said, squinting to make out the words. "It talks about a ritual, a pact with shadowy beings." Thomas shivered, his eyes darting around the chamber. "What kind of pact?" "One of protection," Emma replied, her voice shaking. "In exchange for safety from invaders, the villagers offered their souls. But something went wrong. The shadows demanded more, and the village was cursed." Suddenly, a chilling laugh echoed through the chamber. Thomas and Emma spun around, their torches casting long shadows on the walls. From the darkness, a figure emerged, an old woman, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "You shouldn't have come here," she hissed, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. "The pact must be honored." "Who are you?" Thomas demanded, stepping protectively in front of Emma. "I am the guardian of the pact," the old woman replied, her eyes narrowing. "And you are trespassers." Before they could react, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The shadows on the walls came to life, swirling around the chamber and closing in on them. Thomas and Emma backed away, but the shadows were relentless, their cold tendrils wrapping around their limbs. "Run!" Thomas shouted, grabbing Emma's hand. They sprinted back towards the passageway, the shadows nipping at their heels. As they ran, the carvings on the walls seemed to come alive, the figures writhing in agony. They burst out of the cave into the forest, the cold night air hitting them like a wave. But their relief was short-lived. The shadows followed them, slipping through the trees and surrounding them. The forest itself seemed to twist and change, paths closing off and branches reaching out like skeletal hands. In their panic, they stumbled upon a hidden clearing. In the center stood a circle of ancient stones, each inscribed with glowing runes. The shadows hesitated at the edge of the clearing, unable to cross the boundary. "This must be a place of power," Emma gasped, catching her breath. "A sanctuary against the shadows." As they stood in the circle, trying to gather their thoughts, a figure stepped into the clearing. It was a young girl, her eyes wide with fear. "You have to stop them," she pleaded. "The shadows will consume everything." "How?" Thomas asked, desperation in his voice. "How do we stop them?" The girl pointed to the center stone. "The ritual must be reversed. You need to break the pact." "But how do we do that?" Emma asked, her mind racing. "The answers lie in the cave," the girl replied. "Find the heart of the altar and destroy it. Only then will the curse be lifted." As the first light of dawn began to pierce through the trees, Thomas and Emma knew they had no time to waste. They would have to return to the cave and face the dark forces that awaited them. The fate of Elmsworth, and perhaps the entire world, rested on their shoulders. Armed with newfound determination, Thomas and Emma prepared to re-enter the cave. They knew the shadows would be waiting, but they had no choice. The village, and their own lives, depended on their success. As they retraced their steps through the forest, the shadows seemed to sense their resolve. The air grew colder, and an unnatural silence fell over the woods. When they reached the cave entrance, the darkness inside seemed even more menacing than before. "We have to be quick," Emma whispered. "We can't let the shadows overwhelm us." They moved swiftly through the passageway, the carvings on the walls watching them with hollow eyes. When they reached the underground chamber, the old woman was waiting, her glowing eyes fixed on them. "You cannot break the pact," she hissed. "The shadows will not allow it." Ignoring her, Thomas and Emma approached the altar. The symbols on its surface pulsed with dark energy, and a low hum filled the chamber. Emma flipped through the journal, searching for the instructions to break the ritual. "Here," she said, pointing to a passage. "We need to find the heart of the altar and destroy it. It's the source of the shadow's power." The old woman shrieked and lunged at them, but Thomas blocked her path. "Go, Emma! Find the heart!" Emma searched frantically, her eyes scanning the altar for any sign of the heart. Her fingers traced the symbols, feeling for a hidden compartment. Suddenly, a section of the stone shifted under her touch, revealing a small, glowing crystal. "This must be it," she breathed, carefully removing the crystal from its hiding place. As they made their way back to Elmsworth, the village was no longer a ghost town. The villagers, once lost to the shadows, began to reappear, confused but unharmed. The curse had been lifted, and life returned to the village. Thomas and Emma were hailed as heroes, their bravery and determination saving the village from certain doom. But they knew the true battle was against the darkness that lurked in the human heart, a battle that would never truly end. As she held it up, the chamber began to shake, and the shadows writhed in agony. The old woman screamed, her form flickering like a dying flame. "No, you cannot do this!" "Destroy it, Emma," Thomas shouted, struggling to keep the old woman at bay. With all her strength, Emma threw the crystal to the ground, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. The chamber was filled with a blinding light, and the shadows let out a deafening wail. The old woman dissolved into mist, her screams echoing through the cave. As the light faded, the chamber grew silent. The shadows were gone, and the oppressive darkness had lifted. Thomas and Emma stood in stunned silence, hardly daring to believe they had succeeded. "We did it," Thomas said, his voice trembling with relief. "We broke the pact,